I'm sure that we all have a decade that we identify with. Or coming of age decade, if you will. And mine was the 60s. The 1960s, okay? Not the 1860s, anyway, yeah. 1960s. In 1960, I was 12 years old. And as the decade morphed into the 70s, as it ended, I was 22. So, formative years, to say the least. And an awful lot went on during that time. First and foremost is the Vietnam War and the protests that war generated. First time I'm sure in American history where groups of young people chanted to the president, "Hell no! LBJ, LBJ, hell no, I won't go. LBJ, hell no, I won't go." Or something, memory fades. But civil disorder. And at the same time, civil disorder, it was the great time of civil rights, where minorities had long overdue change in the social and cultural mores. There was real change in this era, in this domestic social scene, as well as global. Somehow the U.S. said, come a long ways. Well, most things staying the same. We had a young president, John Kennedy, that was a cause for great hope among many people, who was shot and killed in the 60s. We had the Black Panthers, a militant black group carrying arms, Malcolm X, along with the growth of civil rights came the demand for faster and more inclusive growth. And at the same time, so we had the Vietnam War, civil rights, protest. And on top of that we had LSD, psychedelic drugs, love, sex, and rock and roll, revolution in music, social mores, communes, just massive movement, massive change on all fronts. Great time to be alive, I would say, looking back. Great time, never bored. And I can remember, along with all of this, new paradigm, I guess, a new way to look at things. That was New Age thinking. And the most obvious thing to me about New Age thinking was that there was nothing new about it. It was old, rehashed concepts pulled out of many, many arenas. First of all, I mentioned Theosophy, and I forgot to mention Madame Blavatsky, Russian-German woman, who then Annie Besant became a follower of hers and changed some things. But Theosophy, the Great White Brotherhood, the Brotherhood of Light, the Rosicrucians, hippies, long hair, loosening, birth control, big change that allowed loosening of sexual mores without the consequence of pregnancy. Pre-AIDS, I might add, where sexual proclivities, the worst could happen was gonorrhea, syphilis, treatable. So the freedom between birth control was a heady time to be alive, to be a young man in the middle of all of it. But it was, I had my spiritual bent already, my spiritual sense, my spiritual goals, my spiritual sense of directions, while all this was going on. So I looked to New Age, I looked to Theosophy, I looked to other Scientology. I remember talking in the little tin can with the little string, high-tech stuff, but thinking that, reading some of his L. Ron Hubbard stuff, and thinking, God, what a bunch of, garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. Not impressed. Overwhelmingly unimpressed. But I did have some contact. Because I was experimenting and was looking for anything that might bring me closer to what I knew was so. And I remember hearing about indigo children. And while I never identified myself as an indigo child, I was a little older. 2 old indigo children started being recognized in the 70s. And if you will, I just want to read a little something from Wikipedia on my iPad about indigo children. According to a pseudo-scientific, I love that, false science. Is there such a thing? Remember, what was false before is now true. And what's true now is in the process of becoming false. So, I love this, the bent, whoever wrote this, the pseudo-scientific New Age concept are children who are believed to possess special, unusual, and sometimes supernatural traits or abilities. The ideas is based on concepts developed in the 1970s by Nancy Ann Tapp and further developed by Lee Carroll and Jan Tober. The concept of indigo children gained popular interest with the publication of a series of books in the late 1990s and the release of several films in the following decade. A variety of books, conferences, and related materials have been created surrounding belief in the idea of indigo children and their nature and abilities. The interpretations of these beliefs range from their being the next stage in human evolution, in some cases possessing paranormal abilities such as telepathy, to the belief that they are more empathetic and creative than their peers. Although no scientific studies give credibility to the existence of indigo children or their traits, the phenomenon appeals to some parents whose children have been diagnosed with learning disabilities, and to parents seeking to believe that their children are special. Critics view this as a way for parents to avoid considering pediatric treatment or psychiatric diagnosis. The list of traits used to describe the children has also been criticized for being vague enough to be applied to almost anyone, a form of the Forer effect. So I read that for 2 reasons. I think the bias was pretty clear. And I've never really had much interest in the paranormal, extrasensory perception. I thought was really beside the point. I never question, however, the possibility. I'm always open to any possibility. So I don't close the door out of hand on anything. But attaining these skills were not very much important then and now. But I was interested in fortune telling, palm reading. These things were entertaining along with interest in astrology. But it was just something fun to do. It was light-hearted. And palm reading, I've been fortunate to go around the world and have different people look at my palm, and I would really confuse them, because fortune tellers, people go to them to hear good news. I'd say, hey, any bad news? Every time I went to any kind of fortune teller, tell me the bad things. That's what's important, because I thought some warning might be useful. I remember years ago, here in Taiwan, this is a gold chain if you can't see it. I had been in a series, four or five motorcycle accidents in the same year. And I have to say that all of them but one were my fault. Driving too fast. Yeah. So I went to see a Taoist. My friend said, you better go see a Taoist fortune teller. And at that time, among other things, they said, sell your motorcycle, buy a car. Sound advice. I followed up on that. Didn't need a fortune teller to tell me that. But she also, I want to say, she mentioned, this is years ago, wear a gold chain. So, it's been with me ever since. Superstitious or not, how could you go wrong wearing gold? And I've had it on ever since, 20 years. Give or take a couple years. So getting back to new agey, old age kind of things. I was always interested in change. Growing up hearing famous song, Age of Aquarius, and hearing about a new age, a dawning of man. And Age of Aquarius, well, prior to that, we came out of about 2,000 years, letters, in the age of Pisces. Now, why it works, Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, right? The 12th sign. But for some reason, measuring the ages, we go back, like a retrograde, or so we go back. So the dawning of the age of Aquarius, that was, I don't know exactly when this was supposed to have taken, but I think we're well into the age of Aquarius. But at the time that I was interested, we were celebrating the cusp of change. So, always interested in change. Things have to get better, don't they? And when I talk about change, I'm talking about large scale, on a human scale. All of mankind. There's always been those beacons who have arisen from the morass of mediocrity that we tend to be, have been. Probably safe to say will be. The hope of change on a big scale. It's part of my dreaming big that I talked about before. Lofty goals. I have wanted all of us to wake up and remember who we've always been, spiritually awakened, connected, one and the same, the be-all and end-all. And it wasn't until, I think the most important thing to say about the 60s is I survived them. Didn't go to jail. Graduated from high school. Well into college. Didn't finish till later. But I did what I was supposed to do. Just got by. And I find cause for celebration in that. And it wasn't until, I guess about 2009, I heard about another idea of another concept of evolution of man. Human design. Ra Uru Hu. God. 1989, I think. Neutrino, we had a supernova, and the neutrinos that travel, the particles that travel just less than the speed of light, and are said to carry information. Supernova exploded, and we were bombarded. All of us here on Earth were bombarded with the same neutrinos, which, according to Ra in his revelation, contain information about information far beyond the realms that we were, our current level of understanding, and all levels, social, scientific. And he had an 8-day experience where he was able to receive all this information. And he put it together and called it human design, using elements of the Kabbalah from the Jewish tradition, the I Ching, Western astrology. Put together a whole package, which I feel really intriguing and very interesting. In 2007, I was in Koh Samui, an island off the coast of the west coast of Thailand, and I'd gone there to do fasting and cleansing. I was a big fan of fasting, and went to a place in Koh Samui and went on a 9-day fast. And met a man eating at the vegan, raw food restaurant, greatest food, best desserts. But I didn't get to eat that until my 9-day fast was up. But boy, was it worth it. Great desserts. Loved the brownies. But it was all sugar-free and raw and vegan. Great kitchen. Friendly staff. Nice people. So I met a friend in there, Tom from Holland. And he introduced me to Deepak, who was here in Taiwan, astrologer, who I've mentioned before, who introduced me my first time I saw human design, about 8 or 9 years ago. And I was immediately enthralled and interested, and went to the internet to find the everything that I could about this concept. Human design. Great name too, by the way. And Ra talked about us transitioning from a seven-centered, the chakra centers, 7 chakra centers that most of us know today, transition to 9, adding emotive, and splenic. So on the 2 sides, adding 2 more centers of energy. And talked about this transition. And it says, according to Ra, in 2027, which is rapidly approaching, we'll be moving into the age of the raves. And they sound a lot like the indigo children from the 70s. And from what he said, many of them have been coming early, and there's prevalence of them all around us. And we talked what I read about indigo children, parents hoping to find something extraordinary about their children. And the last 30 years we've been plagued with learning disorders and inability to sit still. Children have obviously changed. Autism is off the charts in the growth. And both the indigo children and Ra's rave offers hope to parents that are challenged by these children. Again, pseudo-scientific. Whoopee! Pseudo-scientific. Yeah, it makes me chuckle because we tend to get so grim. Lighten up. Lighten up. So, these new beings who are going to communicate on an emotive level. Maybe it's telepathy that they were talking about of the indigo children. But he predicts that social structure as we know it will continue to disintegrate. More and more natural disasters. The internet that I'm using, that I'm seeing, those of you that are watching, will no longer be. And the cooperation that makes this possible hasn't long to live, according to these people. And that gives me pause, because what are the millennials going to do? No internet? I don't know what's going to happen to the millennials. Poor millennials really got the short end of the stick. Hey, you guys, millennials, enjoy this while you can. They always want faster. You know, it's too slow. Give me that information. Faster and faster. Well, let's see what happens. Looking around the world, it's pretty obvious that the tendency to decay is in full boom right now. And I'm more amazed that the world works as well as it does right now, instead of wondering why it doesn't work better. I'm in a sense of awe that the cooperation that is allowing us to keep this together. But I think it's living on borrowed time. If you just look at the tendencies of how you see things. But don't be so quick to judge. Don't be so quick to judge. I'm talking about natural disasters, talking about pollution, talking about the ozone layer thinning. The rays, as it turns out, will require the earth to be a hotter place. They would need the temperature to warm up. The emotive, instead of internet, they're going to have intranet, their nonverbal communication focused on emotions, on the feeling level, the intellectual level that we've been in the previous age, the age of Pisces, the seven-centered beings, the age of science, the age of accumulation of knowledge, the age of rapid change in transportation and every other thing that you can think of, the change that we've experienced in the last couple hundred years, is many times over the change that preceded it, the cumulative changes of the whole time that preceded it. This is coming to a halt, so they say. And the reason I mentioned about the temperature change, and they need to be hotter, it's like we had a grand plan somehow. Put the planet, put holes nails in, cause the temperature to rise. We'll be fitting the requirements of the new expression of mankind. Not without a ray of hope. So, no matter how much we blunder, maybe it's going to turn out okay anyway. I don't know if I'll live to see much of this change, or to see if it was just another millennial. Remember when it turned 2000, the end of the world was coming? The Mayan calendar, whatever that was. We've looked at, we've predicted and looked at and passed dates of many catastrophes. But I do feel, in my spiritual gut, I do feel that there's a huge change taking place. I believe that there's more awakened, enlightened beings on this plane, on this earth, right now, than probably all the previous ones added together. It's not uncommon. I would venture to say that almost every human being, knowing or not, has had some contact with awakened being, highly spiritually evolved person, more than likely hiding in extraordinary ordinariness, the best kind. So, coupled with something starts as a kind of pseudoscience, but everything comes from somewhere. Didn't science itself come from pseudoscience? Doesn't it have its roots firmly in pseudoscience? I can only imagine in 200 years when humankind looks back on us here in 2018 and said, do you believe that they believe this? Can you believe? Just as we look back, the earth was flat. The sun rotated around the earth. Columbus could sail so far and then fall off because of the flat earth. And its source of entertainment, its source of mirth, we get a good chuckle. But don't be so secure. Don't be so sure. Those people back then were just as confident in their science, in their facts, as we are so enamored of today. Humankind, we haven't changed much, but there's always the hope that this will not always be the case. This will not always be so. As more and more people wake up, as a lot more remembering goes on of who and what we were before we fell asleep, who we were before we had to earn our way back up the hierarchy, earn by paying karmic debts, taking responsibilities, and earnest, sincere practice, be it jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge, be it bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, the path of devotion, or be it karma yoga, the path of selfless action, or even a synthesis of 2 or 3 of them. Things are changing. It's about time. And time will tell whether there'll be good changes or not so good changes. With the caveat of always remembering we're really not in a very good position to judge the rightness or the wrongness of any events. Who's to say? In my personal life, many blunders have turned out with an upside. So, I did that on purpose. Anyway, think about it.